With that, we'll get started. Welcome to our COVID-19 SBA Loan Navigation and Resources webinar. My name is Mitzi McCormick. I'm with the Halifax County Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for being with us today. Our intent is to provide you with important information to help your business during this time. Today, you will hear from Martin Short, who is the Lead Economic Development Specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration, Tammy Poole, Senior Vice President and Community Banking Director with Carter Bank and Trust, and Dawn DeHart, Community Development Lending Director with Carter Bank and Trust. So thank you all for being here and helping us with this webinar today. Brian Brown is also with us, and he will go over some regional resources to help you. If you have questions through the webinar, please feel free to type them in the Q&A. Should be down at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll address those following the presentations. We will also send out the slide deck and presentation following this as well, and it'll also be on our website at halifaxchamber.net. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Martin. I will share his presentation and get started on that. So thank you, Martin, for being here. Just bear with me for a second while I
You're welcome.
Pulled up. There we go. Okay.
I think that's it. I think we have it right there, Mitzi. Okay. Good morning, everyone. As Mitzi mentioned, my name is Martin Short. I'm the Lead Economic Development Specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration, the Virginia District Office, also the Public Information Officer here as well. So I'm just going to talk to you some about the economic resources that we have for COVID-19 and run through some of the basics, the high-level information. So let's go ahead and start with slide number 2, Mitzi. We can go ahead and get right into it. Yeah, so if you look at your table here, it's a quick comparison. You know, we have the EIDL program. EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And the PPP to the right is Paycheck Protection Plan. And so the first one came out was EIDL. That came out in the very beginning, and that was designed to give a boost. Those are funds coming directly from the SBA. And as you can see, the interest rate for small businesses is 3.75, and then for nonprofits or private nonprofits is 2.75, and of course to the right, the interest rate is 1% for the PPP. Right now, the maximum loan amount on the EIDL is $2 million. And let me just go back here because we get a lot of questions. There is an advance too of $10,000, which is forgivable, or we may call it a grant. I want to clarify something with that because we're getting a lot of questions about that, and people are asking, well, where's my $10,000? Well, that's not how it works. It works based on a formula of the number of employees you have. So it equals out to $1,000 per employee. So if you have 3 employees, we're talking $3,000. If you have 10 employees, we're talking $10,000. So we want to make sure that people are aware of that, because I think, just to be honest, in the beginning, I think we didn't do a good job of expelling that out. So there's been some confusion, but I want to make sure that's clear. That's how it works. It's based on the number of employees, $1,000 per employee. That's how that works. And so with the PPP, that goes up to $10 million. And we can talk to that a little bit later as it relates to lenders. And the emergency advance, the EIDL, is forgivable, as I mentioned. It is considered more so a grant. And then you have your maturity, and you have how to apply. With the EIDL, you apply directly to the Office of Disaster Assistance. And you go in, you fill out the fields. Once you get logged into it, or not logged in, but once you get to the landing page, the front page, and you can fill out the information. It's very streamlined, much more efficient than what we put out initially. And we had a few iterations of it because the first one um, didn't work quite as well as we would like. We didn't really understand the demand, so we had to go back and do some make some changes there. So to back up a little bit, well, before I back up, keep in mind that your deadline for the EIDL is December 21st, 2020, and for PPP, it's June 30th. So June 30th is right around the corner. So please keep that in mind. And again, with the EIDL, you apply directly through us. With the PPP, you have to find a lender. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Paycheck Protection Plan, its intent, and both of these platforms are intended to save jobs, to keep people on the payroll. In particular, with the PPP, the payroll costs, those costs are forgivable, and the interest in the mortgage and rent and utilities. Especially, you must use 75% of that on payroll. Okay, so again, it's designed to keep people employed. And that's an important piece. So be somewhat mindful of that when you're looking at applying and you're going through the application process with the lender. And I'm sure that the lenders are going to talk more about that as we go along. So Mitzi, if you would go to the next slide, please. Okay. Now, how do you find a lender? Okay. The best tool to use is the tool we have on the screen here. Is clicking on the link and typing in a zip code, and it'll bring up numerous lenders or a number of lenders. And so you want to find out which lender, maybe you already banking with a lender, a particular lender that was presented to you in the search, or maybe you have to go to another lender. So, but that's the way that works. And there's really not a better way of putting it to you or giving it in a different way so that it's easier. That's the process. That's what we're telling people to use, and that's the tool that they have to use in order to find a lender, unless they already have a relationship with a lender that they bank with from a business standpoint. Let's go to the next slide, Mitzi, please. Now, this is the EIDL application bill. Okay, this is the first page. When you click on the link, it's going to take you directly to this page. This is the page you're going to see, and it's very streamlined. Not a lot of fields. So you choose one and you go through the list and find out which one works best for you or fits your particular business. You click on it, and then you'll just go through the screens. Let's go to the next slide, Mitzi. Okay. Now, we get a lot of questions, and unfortunately, we aren't able to answer a lot of those questions. But one of the main questions that we get is application status. At the district office, we do not have access to that. You have to call Disaster Assistance or Disaster Customer Service Center. They're operating around the clock 24/7, and that's the number there. Or you can email Disaster. You can, if you're having an issue with pulling together your financials or tracking what your current financial situation, your business's current financial situation is, please, by all means, make an appointment with one of our resource partners, such as the SBDC, or SCORE, or the WBC, which is Women's Business Center, or the VBOC, Veteran Business Outreach Center. Also, we're doing webinars on these as well. But if you're having problems and you have questions about how to complete the application, whether it's for the PPP or the EIDL, we can assist with that. Next slide, please, Mitzi. Okay. And this is the contact information. And at the district office, we do not have, as I mentioned, we don't have access to the application process, the system, or the status of it. We were just not granted that for whatever reason. But we are here to answer questions and to provide assistance as much as possible. Again, for assembling your financial documentation, check with the resource partner. We have a link where you can find a resource partner nearest you or closest to you. And again, if you really need to talk to someone in disaster assistance, there's a phone number there. I will say too, just to be forthright, there's a wait. Okay, so you have to, when you call, you're going to get in a queue, and you could be caller number 100 or number 500. I just need to point that out because I know time is of an essence, and people need to have good, solid information so they can make the best decisions. Let's go to the next slide, Mitzi. Okay, and these are links to coronavirus information on federal programs and programs about the SBA participation in the coronavirus effort. Please click on those. Also, there's a link for it in Spanish as well. I believe that's it, Mitzi, is it? Yep, I believe that's my spiel there.
Mitzi, you're on mute.
Okay, now I'm not on mute. Sorry about that. With that, I will turn it over to Tammy Poole and Dawn DeHart and share my screen for their presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tammy Poole. I work at Carter Bank and Trust there in South Boston. I'm at home, of course, today, like everyone else. We wanted to go over just a little bit about the SBA relief programs. Mitzi, you can go to the next slide. Carter Bank and Trust, we're actually partnering with Cabbage, which is a third-party vendor. And they partner with SBA authorized banks to deliver paycheck protection programs to small businesses. If you go to the next slide, Mitzi. You can access that if you go to www.cbtcares.com, and then I've got that circled in red. If you see that green bar right there at the top, it's a blue-green color, and it says SBA Paycheck Protection Program. If you click right there, go to the next page, and then it comes up and you can apply here. And then it talks a little bit about what it is, and then you continue on to apply there. And then it tells you, you know, how it works, what's involved. You can read all of this right there. Next slide. And then how to apply. And just like Martin said, it's streamlined. So you submit your information, they'll calculate how much you could be eligible for, and then you know, how to take the loan when you're approved. So then you would just continue on and apply. And then it's also got a number of 1-800 number to call. And like Martin also said, you're getting in a queue. It could be a little wait there to get an answer. It also has a web page that you can go to, and then it also has an FAQ page that you could look at for any questions that you may have. Right now, this was our numbers last night. We had taken 1,470 SBA PPP applications have been submitted through our website. And another point that I really want to make, to everyone on the call, Carter Bank and Trust is assisting our communities by offering this application to both our customers and non-customers. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter is our community. So whether you bank with us or not, you can still go onto that website and apply. At the end of that, wherever you want to put the funds, I mean, we're hoping that you will open up an account with our bank, of course, but you can, deposit those funds into another bank, because that is the decision that Carter Bank and Trust made, that we wanted to help our communities in the end. So feel free, if you're a customer or future customer of our bank, please just try to get the help. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn DeHart, who has been working with me the last couple of weeks. We have really become extra close because we've been really working with these loans all hours of the day. So Dawn, take it away.
Thank you, Tammy. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to help the team give out this vital information to help save all of our community businesses. One of the things I think I would add on to what Tammy just mentioned was when you look at the Paycheck Protection Program, the latest statistics that we have is that out of that roughly 350 billion that was made available through the CARES Act, 250 billion of that has been committed in actual loans, and that is about 1 million loan applications is what I heard late yesterday. So it's been a very popular program. Of course, people are gravitating to the PPP program because of the loan forgiveness component. But going back to what Martin mentioned, there are 2 programs out there that were launched specifically to support as a lifeline to small businesses. One is the Economic Injury Direct Loan Program that is direct through the SBA.gov website. And in of course, the other PPP program with the loan forgiveness piece. What we thought might be a value add today for presentation purposes was to answer the question, how does a business prepare an application? How do you prepare the documentation that you need to apply to both programs? And Martin, I think I'm correct in saying that an applicant can apply for both programs, EIDL and PPP. They just have to be careful that they use the loan proceeds for different purposes. They can't commingle. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. And so
Okay.
if you apply for the EIDL and then you go for the P3 or PPP, that has to be accounted for, the EIDL loan or the grant in the PPP.
Okay. So let's focus on the Economic Injury Direct Loan Program first. An applicant will go directly to the SBA.gov website, and the documentation that a business should always have available anyway, regardless of whether you're going for the EIDL loan or down to your local bank for a typical business loan. You know, the information that you would want to have pretty readily available at your fingertips would be a personal financial statement. And when you're applying for the EIDL loan, you need that document on an SBA form. I've got some examples coming up behind this particular slide. A business should have personal tax returns for the principals who have 20% or more of the business ownership. You should have 3 years of business tax returns for the business entity. And depending on timing, that business probably should have a current company prepared financial statement. And the situation I'm thinking of is like right now. If businesses have not filed their 2019 tax return, you'll be providing several years of tax returns, but that would only go through 2018. So you want to provide the most recent year that's possible. And if a tax return has not been filed, then you would want to submit a company prepared financial statement taking you through a full year of 2019 at this point. Every lender is always interested in what the existing debt of that business is at the point of application. So you would want to have a business debt schedule that itemizes your loans that you have on the books right now, as well as those monthly payments. And again, there's an example behind this slide that we'll show you in just a moment. One of the unique things about SBA financing is that the SBA looks for a tax transcript. It's called a 4506T, and that is unique to federal financing. The tax transcript simply means you're authorizing the SBA to pull a tax transcript that will be compared to the tax returns, the business tax returns that you provide at the time of application. They're looking to make sure that there's no fraud, that the tax transcript that the IRS provides agrees with the data that you have provided in your tax returns. And of course, there's an EIDL loan application, and all of these forms and the application form and so forth are itemized on the SBA website at www.sba.gov. So that's a recap of what we would suggest being provided for an EIDL loan application. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, that's an example of a business debt schedule. Again, available on the SBA website. Next slide. All right, that's the tax transcript. I don't know how many people have encountered this in their years of business borrowings and so forth, or if you've ever gone through an SBA loan process. like the SBA 504 program or a 7A loan program and so forth. But this is a typical tax transcript that would be completed at the time of application. Next slide. The example of an SBA personal financial statement that's available on the SBA.gov website. That's just page 1. This is what it looks like. And let's move on to the next slide. Okay, let's talk about the documentation that you would want to apply to the Paycheck Protection Program. Now remember, this one is exclusively looking at payroll. So the documentation is different from the EIDL loan. This is a loan, but subject to 100% forgiveness. And it's, as Martin identified earlier in his part of the presentation, the intent of this particular program is to make sure that a small business can retain its employees. So the focus is very heavily on payroll. Now, Tammy was talking about, we're hosting, Carter Bank hosts a portal for PPP applications that will go through Cabbage. The bank isn't directly involved in making these particular loan decisions and so forth, but we do get a lot of inquiries from applicants who are going through that website and applying for financing. And the question always comes up, what does Cabbage need to document payroll? Now, I will say right up front, we don't have all of the answers, but what we do see is what Cabbage is asking of these applicants. And I've itemized a lot of things here that I think are fairly routine for most small businesses that have employees. Payroll can be documented by a business through a Form 940, which covers unemployment taxes, and that's usually an annual filing. A Form 941 that covers withholding taxes, and I think that's filed quarterly. And then there's something about a 944 that may be specifically requested by the IRS. Most employers also will have a W-3 that shows the wages that are paid to their individual employees. The employee gets the W-2, the employer has the W-3. One of the things that we saw applicants providing Cabbage along the way was, a lot of small businesses use bookkeepers and accountants. There was a good example behind this slide of what an accountant worked up for a small business for quite a few employees at that firm. And it provides a really nice breakdown of gross wages, what are the taxes, what are the other benefits that come out of those gross wages and so forth. We've seen applicants provide that along with all the other Form 940s and so forth that we talked about just a moment ago. Now, depending on the business ownership, you'll have self-employed individuals, sole proprietors, independent contractors. That's where you get into providing financial statements based on business ownership structure. Sole proprietors and so forth would have available a Form 1040 tax return, the latest one, a Schedule C that shows business income. And then for an independent contractor, there will be a Form 1099 that gets provided because, again, the intent here is to show what wages are. The PPP application, of course, is available at several different websites, starting with the SBA.gov. Department of Treasury also has the same documents, home.treasury.gov. And then if someone wants to seek out the application and file an application through Carter Bank, cbtcares.com is how you access that. It's the very same application across the board, no matter where you go. SBA and the Department of Treasury, we're trying to make this a streamlined a process as possible. And so that application is identical no matter where you go, and it's very brief as well. As the business entity goes through the application process, at some point that lender is going to ask for the EIN letter, which gives the tax ID number for that business entity, articles of incorporation, as well as a color copy of a driver's license for ID purposes. And that's just for, identifying the customer that you're dealing with. It's one way to help prevent fraud in the program. So those are the things that we're seeing being requested pretty much across the board in all of the applications through our website at Cabbage. Let's go to the next slide. This is that Excel spreadsheet that an accountant worked up for one of the borrowers that applied through PPP. And it's a nice recap. It's not a standalone document, but it has to go with some of the other federal forms like the 940s and so forth. But I think this was a good recap, that kind of an intermediary step, I think, for a lot of businesses that might be useful down the road, especially for application purposes. Let's go to the next slide there too. Okay, we're at the end of the presentation. What we tried to do here really is just give you a snapshot of how to prepare for the application, give you a sense of, on the PPP program, what would be required to document your payroll. When a lot of the guidance came out from Treasury and SBA, you know, there's some ambiguous language because it was, the program was delivered so quickly that there wasn't time really to provide a lot of detail around what type of documents are being prepared. So the program is constantly evolving to, I think, get to a point of the standard documentation. So this is really designed to help prepare you for having those documents available so that you can apply for the program, get approved quickly, and then get your funding. So that concludes the PPP and the Carter Bank in EIDL program presentation, and I'd be glad to turn it back over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that, you and Tammy, for all your work on that. At this time, I will turn the share over to Brian Brown, who is our Executive Director of the Industrial Development Authority.
Yes, thank you. Apologize for, again, having to be at home. And as I say, I have a face for radio and a voice for newsprint. So bear with me as we go along. One of the things I wanted to share today is we've been working as a creation of a regional task force for the COVID-19 for business development purposes. This includes all of the economic developers and all of the chambers in our region working together to provide one-stop access for people to get information about COVID-19 economic resources that we have. As you see, the screen that I've shared has the website www.sbra.org/COVID-19-resources. And what you will see here is a one-stop shop for everything that's going on in our region regarding COVID-19 events and information. If you click on the events calendar, you will see there are webinars and information throughout the month, and it gives you whether it be a federal, state, regional resource or local resource. As you can see, we had ours this morning. There's also an SBDC one at 12:15, a We Lead challenges during the pandemic at 2. So this gives you opportunities to look at other things and what others are doing and other topics as we go along. You will also see you have state resources, including the Commonwealth of Virginia, Department of Health, the Port of Virginia, taxation, Virginia Economic Developers Association, the Tourism Corporation, all of these giving you information of what's going on with the loan resources and other resources that are available. And you'll see anything that says new is something that's been up in the last 3 to 4 days. Like right here, you see Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD is making available CDBG funds for small cities, towns, and rural counties to respond to local needs, helping create additional loan resources. Also, we have all of our federal programs on there, as well as we talked about here today. You'll get in, you'll see consultants and professional services. So you can look in terms of different areas if you have questions about like temperature screenings. That's a big one that's coming out now, is what are the regulations and what are the pitfalls of doing employee temperature screenings and making sure you stay within the HIPAA regulations. These are things that are additional resources for you as well. Also, you'll see we have Gen Edge and other organizations that are providing additional resources. So this is a great one-stop place. I recommend people coming to this. This is where we will continue to update on a daily to weekly basis. of all the different things that are going on in our region. And we would love for you to, you can contact us at the Economic Development Office, you can contact the chambers, or you can come straight to these resources as well. So anything we can do to help, we're always here, and we look forward to answering any questions that you might have. This time I'll turn it back over to Mitzi.
Let's see. All right. Okay. Thank you, Brian. If you will, I'm going to
Stop sharing
your screen at this time and check below to see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions at the bottom at this time. So if there are any, now's your chance to ask. We've got some experts in the field on this webinar. So let's see if you, I'll just wait just a minute, see if anyone has any questions. Let's see.
There's something Q&A. Let's see what we got here.
I see that.
Yeah, it looks like we have one question there, Q&A, I believe.
All right, what I'm going to do is just allow these folks to come on and you'll hear them.
Oh, here we go. How we add information to the calendar. You can send it to the chamber. You can send it to the Economic Development Office, or you can send it directly to the resource that you have there with the Southern Virginia Resource Regional Alliance, Linda Green's office, and they will add it to the calendar.
Okay, I think I see Karen Chopin has a question. All right. Well, hopefully we can get Karen's question at another time if we can't get her in here. I think that's all we have for today. Again, I want to thank you for being with us. Thank you to our panelists. I know that this is a very busy time for you all. We at the chamber, we also sent out a survey yesterday, and we would encourage all of our businesses to take that. It's an impacts survey that we've done in collaboration with the IDA. And that information that we put together will help us better understand how this pandemic is affecting our business community and how we can better support you. So with that, anyone
Karen's question came in.
Okay.
What is the length of time the loan covers?
So if we can just go through both of those, the EIDL and the PPP for that.
Okay. Did I hear the length of time or the length of the application process?
Length of time the loan covers. I think you and Dawn would be both good people to answer this.
Right. So if you're talking about the application, so let's just go ahead and back up and start it from once you submit. You submit the application, as we're talking about EIDL now. You submit the application, it takes about 21 days for it to process. Then typically an additional 10 days for disbursement. So you're looking at somewhere around 30 days, okay? And the funds are used, they want you to use them immediately. They should be used immediately because, again, it's about retention of jobs. There's a deadline for applying, too, just so that folks are aware. The deadline for applying, and let me make sure I get it right here. EIDL is December 21st, 2020, and PPP is June 30th, 2020. And so, Don, I'm sure you're going to speak to the process and the length of time, but I will say with the PPP, 8 weeks. So you will pay according to your payroll cycle as soon as you receive the funds, so that you're able to retain those jobs, or employees, I should say.
Yeah, Martin, specifically with the term of the loan, idle, as I understand it, can go up, that loan can go for up to 30 years. Now, the issue being when you apply for idle, usually there's going to be some collateral involved. Most of the time, a small business's real estate is already going to be obligated in some way on another loan.
Right.
I understand it, the SBA will take just a UCC filing on all business assets, and the SBA will actually determine what that loan amount is going to be, and they'll determine the length of that loan based on the amount being received. That's how I understand idle being signed.
Right, right. So that maturity can run up to 30 years, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, right? And PPP, typically you can get that deferred 6 months. I will say this. I suspect that there will be some changes as it relates to some of the terms. And that came about initially. Some of the terms were not as, I guess, you would call generous. Now they're much more generous considering the situation that we're in. And so the PPP, the maturity is up to 2 years. And of course, you know, that's something I guess, Don, you probably can speak to more so on the PPP side as it relates to the lenders.
Well, the PPP program is up to 2 years with an immediate 6-month deferral on the payment. When that borrower comes back, and of course that 2.5 times loan amount times average monthly payroll,
Right.
is to cover a 2-month period, an 8-week period. Then the borrower
8-week period.
comes back and requests the forgiveness. So as long as the head count and the average payroll doesn't change between the time of application and at the time of forgiveness, then that's 100% forgiven. So
Right.
if that business entity, let's say, loses 2 employees, if you start off with 10 and you end up with 8 at the time of the forgiveness, then the forgiveness is prorated, and there will be a small residual amount that comes on as a loan for up to 2 years at 1%.
Right.
That's my understanding about how that program works. So 30
Yeah.
years under, up to 30 years under idle, which will be determined by the SBA, and up to
Sure.
30 years if there's a residual loan amount that remains after the period of forgiveness under the PPP program.
Yeah, and that's my exactly my understanding too, Don. There's one other thing I want to point out. We've been getting questions from, let's say, financial advisors, such as an accountant. So it is in the rule that a borrower may go to his or her accountant to pull together those financials, right? So the question we're getting from a financial services professional is, okay, I need to be compensated. So there's been somewhat of a link or a gap between the borrower, the lender, and the financial services professional. So if you're going to borrow, if you need help with pulling together your financials and you go to your accountant, make sure you connect the two parties, the lender and the accountant, that this is what you're doing and this is your reason for doing it, because there's a compensation component in there for the accountant, okay, or the financial services provider or preparer. So please keep that in mind. We've gotten a few questions or calls about that, and it was just not clear, but it is written in the interim rule, in the final interim rule. So just please be mindful of that as a borrower.
Yeah, and Martin, I think you make a good point. The program, both programs are evolving. They were launched so quickly in an
Yes.
effort to get money in the hands of employers to keep their employees employed for some period of time. It's a lifeline. So the program has some pretty generous features: no fees,
Right.
or lender. Pretty generous rate on the PPP program, and even on the EIDL loan, a fixed rate of 3 3/4 for a for-profit business and 2 3/4 for a nonprofit organization. But I do want to make sure that nonprofits hear this word too. It's very unusual for SBA to support nonprofit organizations. Historically, they've not been eligible. So we want to spread the word that our nonprofit organizations and all of our business communities are a major integral part of the community for the services they provide. So everyone should spread the word that nonprofits are eligible for both of these programs. In addition to for-profit entities.
Yeah, just speaking to the nonprofit, when we first kicked this off, it was only for private nonprofits, not your charity-based public nonprofits. Since then, it has been updated. Faith-based organizations can apply now. So that's something to consider and certainly pass the word on. We've gotten questions about, because some churches have daycares, they have a compensation package for the pastor. And so that's something to factor in when you're applying. So that's included in it now as well.
The need is so widespread. So it's good to see the program is trying to cover every community's needs.
Certainly.
Okay, we have another question in the queue mentioning the PPP loan that will be forgiven. Is any of the EIDL loan going to be forgiven? And you may want to clarify that percentage of the PPP as well.
Okay. Well, I'll shoot off first. So when you're talking about the PPP, 75% of the payroll has to be 75% of the proceeds have to cover payroll cost. Okay. With the EIDL, just the forgiveness aspect of it, is based on the number of employees. I think I may have mentioned it earlier. So if you have 10 employees, you're going to get $10,000. Keep in mind, whenever it's written up to a certain amount, there's some conditions or there's a particular criteria that are in place there. $1,000 per employee. So let's say you have 5 employees. Under the EIDL, you're going to get $5,000. That's how that works. Now, under the PPP, going back to that, 75% that must be used for payroll, in addition to some interest on the mortgage, rent, and utilities. So you want to make sure you understand those guidelines and that you realize how this works. Because now I got a question yesterday from a restaurant owner. He owns 2 restaurants here in Richmond. And he said, how does this work? And what if I have employees who find it more beneficial to take unemployment as opposed to staying on the payroll? Which is a legitimate question. Matter of fact, we are researching it now. I have one of my team members researching that because that's one of those, I guess, gray areas that hasn't been considered. But the intent of the program is to maintain your employees, to keep your employees on the payroll.
So Martin, just to clarify, are you saying that you've got someone researching whether you can combine unemployment and use these programs? I've gotten the same question and I'm not.
Right. So the research that we're doing is, from our understanding, you cannot combine those two.
Okay. It's one or the other then.
Yeah, it's either one or the other, okay, because you're going to get unemployment and additional $600 and receive your salary. No, that's not the intent. So we're researching that and trying to get down to the nitty gritty on it to see just what that means. For example, if you decide, or an employer decides, or employee decides to take unemployment, that means they're no longer on the payroll. I guess they've been possibly terminated due to the shutdown, COVID-19. So with that said, will the borrower be responsible for, will that knock off from his 75%? That very well could decrease his amount or increase the amount that more so increase the amount that he possibly owes. as opposed to.
Yeah, one of the
the,
questions that, one of the questions that I hear is because of the massive unemployment right now, the rush to apply for unemployment, how long will it take to get that first check through unemployment? And so what I see people weighing constantly is, am I better off applying for PPP right now versus unemployment? Because which one am I going to get quicker?
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a timing issue in some cases.
It's a timing issue, and it's a timing issue of the employer. Like his employer is the one who has to apply.
Yeah.
There is another question that's out there. Will part-time employees be included in EIDL and PPP, or do they have to be full-time?
No, from my understanding, no. They if they're part-time, they're included.
And also the owner would be considered a full-time employee.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I see one other in the chat box. Do you foresee running out of money before the deadline? If you're not sure you will need the funds, should you wait or should you go ahead and get the application in now?
Money will not last. So apply quickly.
Right. And I underscore, piggyback, co-sign what Don just said. Do not anticipate or think that the money is infinite and that it will always be there. That is not the case. We've already, we're hearing now talks of additional rounds of funding. So I wouldn't advise anyone to wait. Apply now if it's EIDL or PPP. The PPP, it's earmarked X amount of dollars, okay? It's earmarked for X amount of dollars. It will run out as people continue to apply and get approved. That's why we're hearing additional rounds of funding. The EIDL, apply for that. So just to sum it up, if you need the funding, go ahead and apply. Do not expect the funds just to be sitting around waiting for you to come by and put an application in.
Right. Remember the numbers, the 350 billion, of which 250 billion has already been committed. So 2/3 of that pocketbook basically has been utilized. So don't wait. Get your name in the hat immediately.
Right.
Great.
Exactly.
One question from the restaurant industry. Can I include average tips in payroll for tip staff?
Yes. Matter of fact, that's part of the question that we are researching this morning. I got the call late yesterday evening, so I have one of my team members looking at it. But that's part of the compensation. But we need to get more detail and more clarification on it. And I think that the questioner is speaking to average tips, average income from tips, I believe.
Yes.
So that sounds reasonable. But before I can give a firm, definitive answer, I need more information. So we're working on that. And he's welcome to. You're welcome to share with him my information, Mitzi, and he can email me or call me. Or she can email or call.
Okay.
Can I mention one other thing? Again, guidance comes out every day. The frequently asked questions that are maintained on the Department of Treasury website, pretty much being updated almost every day, aren't they, Martin? So I think that's a good reference point, maybe for some ongoing clarification as things change in the program.
Yes. And like, for example, we're getting new guidance, I would say every other day sometimes at least once a week. And with the changes, as I mentioned earlier, that we were only doing private nonprofits. Now this thing has opened up to religious organizations, which at first I didn't think it was going to do that, but it did. And that's how widespread the impact is and how great the need is. So, I would certainly go to the SBA's website continuously on a regular basis, because I think matter of fact, we have numbers there now on the amount of money loaned out and the number of loans made. Yes, and we have them there by state as well. If it's not there for some, and I haven't looked, but I have it in my file, my computer file. So Mitzi, I can certainly share that with you guys here shortly.
One more thing I wanted to share too before we end the call. Carter Bacon Trust, we cover all of Virginia and North Carolina. We go up to Fredericksburg, down to Lumberton, North Carolina. And we're also assisting food banks, schools that, some schools have set up Wi-Fi areas for the students to come back in. We're assisting some of the schools with that. If your business has changed and you're making masks or you're making hand sanitizer, things like that, please email Dawn or I, about that, because, we're helping our communities with that as well. So that's one other thing that we're doing at Carter Bank. So please let us know if we can help your community in any way.
And as Martin, Dawn, and Tammy have all said, these regulations are changing quite often and things are moving very swiftly. We are going to continue to keep that resource that I share with you up to date. Anything we get from SBA or any of our lending partners goes on that site, so you get to see the latest information that's coming out.
All right, perfect.
Exactly.
Well, I don't see any more questions, and I certainly do appreciate everyone's time this morning. Thank you again, and if there's any way, of course, we can assist you, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.